A Sister's Confession. Marguerite Devereux was dying. Although she was only 56 years old, she looked at least 75. Her labored breaths filled the room. As she lay on the bed, her face paler than the sheets beneath her, she shivered violently from the cold, her body trembling with pain. Her eyes, sunken and hollow, stared into the distance, as though she had witnessed something unspeakable. Beside her, Suzanne, Marguerite's elder sister by 6 years, knelt in despair. Tears streamed down Suzanne's face as she clung to the bedside, her sobs echoing in the still room. A small table stood near Marguerite's bed, draped with a white cloth and bearing 2 lit candles. The priest was expected at any moment to provide Marguerite solace and guidance in her final hours. The house exuded an air of sorrow. Medicine bottles cluttered the furniture, clothes lay scattered about, and chairs seemed askew, as though thrown into chaos. Death lingered silently in the room, waiting to claim his prey. A lifetime of sacrifice. The bond between the 2 sisters was a tale known far and wide. Suzanne, in her youth, had been deeply in love with a man named Henri de Saint-Pierre. Their engagement was the talk of the town, and their wedding was just days away when tragedy struck. Henri died suddenly. Devastated, Suzanne swore never to marry and lived as a widow for the rest of her days. Marguerite, then only 12, had been a devoted younger sister. One day she had thrown herself into Suzanne's arms and declared, "I'll never leave you. Never. I shall never marry either. I'll stay with you always, sister." Suzanne, touched by the child's devotion, kissed her, though she doubted Marguerite would keep her vow. But Marguerite did. Despite her remarkable beauty and many suitors, she refused every proposal, dedicating her life to Suzanne. They were inseparable, sharing every moment together. Yet Marguerite's unspoken sadness weighed heavily on her. She grew older faster, her hair turning white at 30. Illness plagued her, and now, as the end drew near, she would be the first to die. The dreaded confession. Marguerite had spoken little in the past 24 hours, except to whisper at dawn, "Call the priest at once." She lay shivering, her lips trembling, as though the words she needed to say were too heavy to bear. Suzanne sat by her, sobbing bitterly and murmuring, "Margot, my poor Margot, my little one." When the priest arrived, Marguerite stirred. Her trembling hands clutched the bedclothes as she sat up suddenly. "Father, I must confess," she stammered, her voice shaking. The priest gently took her hand and urged her to speak. Marguerite turned to Suzanne and said, "Sister, sit down and listen." The priest guided Suzanne to a chair and placed a hand on each of the sisters' shoulders. "Lord, grant them strength," he prayed softly. Marguerite began to speak, her voice raw with emotion. Forgive me, Suzanne. I beg you. You don't know how afraid I've been of this moment all my life. Suzanne, through her tears, whispered, Why should I forgive you? My little one. You've sacrificed everything for me. You're an angel. But Marguerite interrupted. No. Be silent. Let me speak. It is terrible. I must tell you everything. Do you remember Henry? Suzanne froze. The name brought back memories of love and loss. Marguerite continued, her words tumbling out. I was only 12, but I loved him. The first time he came, I admired him so much. I dreamed of him. When I heard he was going to marry you, I cried for nights. I couldn't bear it. She paused, her face contorted with pain. 10 days before your wedding, I saw you and Henry sitting under the pine tree. He held you, and I was consumed by jealousy. I said to myself, he will never marry Suzanne. Never. And then I did something terrible. Marguerite's voice broke. I saw the gardener crush glass into powder to kill stray dogs. I stole some and put it into the cakes you made for Henry. He ate them. I ate one too, to avoid suspicion. 3 days later, he died. I have been ill ever since. Oh, Suzanne, I killed him. I killed the man you loved. Marguerite sobbed uncontrollably. I have lived with this guilt every day. I stayed with you because I couldn't leave you. I knew I had to confess on my deathbed. I am terrified of meeting Henry in the afterlife. Suzanne, I beg you, forgive me. The priest urged Suzanne to respond. Madam, your sister is dying. She needs your forgiveness. Tears streaming down her face, Suzanne leaned over Marguerite and embraced her. I forgive you, my little one, she said, her voice filled with both sorrow and love. I forgive you. Marguerite exhaled a deep breath, her face softening as she whispered, Thank you, sister. Moments later, her eyes closed for the final time. In the quiet room, Suzanne wept for her sister, for Henry, and for the life they all could have shared. The candles flickered, their flames, a fragile reminder of the light and darkness intertwined in the human heart.